They had been living together for 9 years. Friends called them a model couple, calm, balanced, never quarreled in public, always supported each other. Andrew worked as an engineer in a design bureau. Tatiana was a literature teacher at a gymnasium. They had a son, Artyom, an 8-year-old boy with dark eyes and constant questions. Everything seemed fine on the surface. A house, a car, summer trips to the south, family photos on social networks. But under the external calm, a crack had been smoldering for a long time. It was not scandals or betrayals that destroyed their relationship, but an even, almost sterile indifference that penetrated deeper and deeper over the years. They slept in the same bed, but they had not hugged in their sleep for a long time. At dinner, they talked about work and school, but not about themselves. They were close, but each in their own cage. Tatiana did not realize this right away. For a long time she thought that this was how it should be: fatigue, everyday life, adulthood. She wasn't looking for change. Cheating wasn't in her nature. But one spring day, everything changed. It was an ordinary Thursday. After classes at the gymnasium, a new history teacher, Alexei, approached her. Young, lively, with lively eyes and a slightly unkempt hairdo. He had recently arrived from another city, was divorced, and enjoyed chatting with his colleagues. They started talking about books, then about movies, and soon moved on to topics that Tatiana hadn't touched on for a long time: personal feelings, dreams, memories of her youth. She felt strangely at ease. He listened, not out of politeness, but with interest. He laughed at the right moments. He answered sincerely, sometimes even too frankly. After a week of such conversations, Tatiana felt anxious excitement for the first time in her life when returning home. She couldn't admit to herself that she was looking forward to a new meeting with Alexei more than an evening with her husband and son. They started drinking coffee together in the teacher's room. Then, having lunch at the nearest cafe. Alexei hardly asked about her family, as if he knew that talking about her husband would be painful. He talked about his trips, about the books that turned his inner world upside down, about the women he had once loved. Sometimes he fell silent, looked at her too long. Once he lightly touched her hand. She did not pull it away, but for the rest of the day she could not concentrate. In the evening in bed with Andrei, it seemed to her that a trace of someone else's warmth remained on her fingers. She tried to drive this thought away, but she could not. Something in her had shifted. Andrei did not notice. Or pretended not to notice. He was used to Tatiana being immersed in work, in her son, in her books. He himself had long lived a parallel life, not with other women, no. Just in the shadows, where emotions were muted, desires simplified, and love became part of the routine, like brushing teeth. He saw that Tanya began to think more often, to stay late at work, to laugh less often. But I thought, spring, tired. It will pass. The first kiss happened in the school library. They stayed after the meeting, discussed the exam schedule, then Alexei suddenly fell silent, came closer. His hand lay on her cheek, and she did not flinch. Everything happened as if in a fog, without words, on the level of instinct. Warmly, greedily, restrainedly, and without any guilt. Afterwards, she looked in the mirror in the toilet for a long time. She touched her lips, then wiped off the lipstick. Everything inside was burning. Fear mixed with delight, shame with relief. She returned home late, citing the teacher's counsel. Andrei did not ask a single question. Further, it was easier. Secret meetings, short correspondence, rare walks away from school. They did not talk about the future. It was like an attempt to remember what it means to be alive. For Tatiana, this was not just a romance, it was her first real secret. And it frightened and attracted her at the same time. But no secret remains a secret forever. One early morning, Andrei woke up earlier than usual. The house was quiet. Tatiana was standing in the kitchen, talking on the phone in a low voice. He heard only individual words: yes, too, I can't now, I'll write later. When she noticed his gaze, she shuddered and abruptly ended the conversation. Who was that? He asked simply, without pressing. A colleague. A historian. Alexei. Confusion with a magazine. At 7 in the morning. She shrugged, lowered her eyes. He said nothing, just sat down at the table. But an anxious thought was already unfolding in his head. He didn't make a scene, didn't check his phone, didn't follow. But from now on he began to observe, silently. The pauses in the conversation became longer. Tanya was increasingly somewhere inside herself, not here. Andrew felt an invisible thread slowly stretching between them, ready to break. He tried to get something back. He suggested going to the theater together, cooking dinner for two. She smiled, said yes, but remained cold. As if her soul was already in another place. With Alexei, everything became more serious. He became jealous, demanded more time, hinted at the possibility of changing everything. But Tatiana did not want to change anything. Her love for Alexei was not conscious, rather, an escape from emptiness. She did not plan a divorce, did not want to destroy the family. This was her shelter, her secret place, where she could again feel like a woman, desired, important. One day, Alexei said, "You are afraid." But I am not. I have already lost, I have nothing to lose. And you live between the walls that you built yourself. These words hurt her. But she did not answer. She just left. The turn happened unexpectedly. Artyom, the son, found a photo on his mother's phone. Not too revealing, just a selfie with Alexei, hugging against the backdrop of a park. He asked, "Mom, who is this? Were you walking with him?" Tatiana turned pale. She took the phone and deleted the photo. She said it was just a colleague. But in the evening, Artyom told his father everything. He was on Mom's phone. They are together. I think she loves him. Andrew didn't make a scene. He waited until Tatiana put her son to bed and only said, "Can we talk?" She sat opposite. Silent. He looked at her attentively, as if for the first time. "Do you have someone?" She wanted to lie. To say that she didn't. That Artyom made it all up. That the photo was old. But she couldn't bring herself to say it. Instead, she said, "Yes." He nodded. He sat in silence for a minute. "How long ago?" "A few months." "Do you love him?" Tatiana looked at the floor. "I don't know." He nodded again. I understood everything. The following days were the hardest. They lived in the same apartment, but as neighbors. Andrew didn't yell. He didn't blame. But he was cold. He stopped talking to her, except for the bare minimum. And the worst thing was that Artyom felt it. He became nervous, often withdrew, and began to do worse in school. One day, Andrew came up to her and said, "We need to decide how we are going to live on. I don't want to create hell for you or Artyom. But we can't continue like this." She started crying. Not from fear, but from helplessness. Everything that seemed under control fell apart. She didn't want to leave. But she couldn't get back what she had lost. Alexei was waiting. He was ready to accept her. But when Tatiana came to him in tears and said that perhaps she had ruined everything in vain, he was silent. He looked at her and did not recognize her. The woman he had loved in the cafe around the corner from the school had disappeared. In front of him was a tired, confused mother, wife, teacher, not ready for a new beginning or an old return. "Forgive me," he said. "I'm sorry. But I can't be a lifeline. You have to choose for yourself." She was left alone. Andrew did not file for divorce right away. They lived in separate rooms, talked about their son, went to school together, to parent-teacher meetings. But everything ended between them. Not because of kisses. Not because of sex. But because she left before she physically left. The betrayal was not of the body, but of the soul. A year later, Andrew moved. Artyom stayed with his mother, saw his father on weekends. Alexei left for another city, to teach at a university. And Tatiana stayed. With silence. With memories. And with a lesson that is too hard to forget.